Morning, everybody. Just want to make sure this is all working good. I'm just going to take one moment to share this out to a few places. All right. Hi, Sherry. Good morning, everybody. All right, so I'm just going to get started. So for some of you, I think that some of you know, I've been doing a series on crystals because it's just been asked by so many people for me to kind of do a deep dive into all kinds of stuff related to crystals. So this is part 3. If you're interested in looking at the other ones, I have part 1 and 2 that are on my page that you can always replay. And those I kind of gave more of a foundation on the type of crystal structures there are and how they can help you. And the last week I kind of went over some personal recommendations of crystals that I really like to use and why. And today I wanted to kind of move into a little different of an area and kind of go over 2 things. I wanted to go over different methods that we can use to help ourselves pick the right stones for us, because I feel like that's something that people struggle with a lot, because especially out there, there's so many things on the internet now that can be kind of overwhelming, and there's a lot of different opinions on what crystals are for, or like what the best solution is, or what crystals to use for different things. And while all those methods and that kind of information may be good, sometimes it's not going to resonate with you, and that's totally okay. And I just want to help people kind of realize that it's beyond okay. I think it's all about this kind of personal exploration and this personal journey of figuring out how stones are going to work uniquely for you. Because I think that's the thing. Unfortunately, it's great that there's a lot of information on stones out there, but it almost makes people feel a little paralyzed or maybe even unsure of their own intuition because they see these different kind of rules or things, right? And if they're going against that, or they feel compelled to kind of shift away from those things, they kind of ignore it or they try to resist it because they think it's supposed to be wrong. So I really wanted to try to talk about that today and kind of go over how you can kind of overcome that and allow things to, guide you, and they can be kind of supplemental information that you can kind of piece together. But ultimately, I think the best way to get the maximum benefit out of working with crystals is to 100% follow your own intuition. So everybody just say hi, and again, if you have any questions while I'm doing the video too, please feel free to ask. And as I've been saying in a lot of videos too, like if you want any recommendations or there's anything that you want me to cover overall in this series, just let me know and I'll try my best to kind of cover that in one of the videos that I end up doing. Another video that I'm going to add to the series, I might do this one next week that I'm very excited about, is I'm going to do one on man-made crystals, and I'm also going to do one on crystals from like outer space, so meteorite stuff. So I think that'll be really cool because I don't see a lot of information on those either, and there's so much more than just moldavite. Moldavite is awesome, and I'm going to talk about it in that video, but there's a lot of other types of meteorites or tektites, that kind of stuff that I think people don't know about. So I'm going to try to cover all that in another video that I'll probably do next week. So, and I'll also have a video that's going to be a guided meditation on connecting with a crystal, and there's going to be a lot more. So, I mean, I could probably do this for about 5 weeks, 5 million weeks, but we'll just see where it goes. I'm going to just kind of follow what people are asking for and just see if I ever get guided towards something else that I'm going to add, and I'll keep you guys posted on what I'll be doing. So, I think I'm just going to start by talking about Yeah, okay, talking about different methods for picking your crystals. So I think one of the things, like I was just saying, is that we may, let's say, know that we think we want a stone for the heart center or for a certain chakra. And that's great. But sometimes, let's say we'll search that on Google or something, and you get all these different things, and it can be a little overwhelming. And then it's just like, well, which one is the right one to pick? And I think sometimes that's where we can start to get a little overwhelmed or just unsure of where to go, what direction to take. So I wanted to think of it. I've thought of a few different methods I could show people. So one actually in particular, if you have, let's say, a book on crystals, so that's something that you could do really easily, is that you could just sit quietly for, let's say, a few minutes to center your energy, and then ask spirit or your higher power or whatever you want to ask, your higher self even, right? You can ask, what stone do I really need in my life right now? And simply open your book randomly, and whatever page it ends up on, and whatever stone is on that page, trust what you're getting. I think that's another thing. And it may not make sense even for what you were thinking or what you had heard before or what you had looked up, but trust it. Because again, I think that's the big thing. We don't always trust what we're getting. And also if we don't maybe know about the stone, or maybe it's something that we've never heard about, and we might be like, well, I don't know if that's right for me, just trust it regardless. So that's one way you could do it. And another way is that you don't have to have a book either. So another thing you could do is basically just sit in meditation without anything, but make sure you have like a pen and paper. And I would just ask, again, like I said, your higher self, higher power, whoever you want to ask, what stone do I need right now? And just sit for at least 10 minutes and just kind of tune into what you're getting. And this is also, again, this is a good way to just expand psychic ability, your intuition in general. But what I would ask for you to kind of like focus on is see if you get any colors, if you get any imagery, if you feel anything, hear anything. Everybody's kind of different with their clairs, which are the different kind of psychic senses and how we receive information. So it's going to be different for everybody, how you're kind of picking up on this stuff. But for example, don't get discouraged, is what I want to say. Don't get discouraged if you don't see a literal image of a crystal in your mind. Hi, Patty. Because I don't think that's really how it's going to happen anyway. Because I'll tell you right now, like for me, for example, whenever I receive information in readings, it's usually not going to be literal. It's usually like a form of charades. And I have to kind of piece together why I'm seeing things the way I am. So for example, let's say you start seeing the ocean and you see a lot of colors of blue and you get this feeling of just sea salt or all of those kinds of things about the ocean, right? So that to me right away, because if you're already setting the intention in the meditation, what crystal do I need? You don't have to question why you're seeing that because you've already set the intention. So you can trust the information that you get in response to that question. And so if you're seeing the ocean, then right away I would say something attributed to the ocean, being it aquamarine or aqua aura quartz or even Larimar. Those are a few, right? So that would be one way to kind of pick up on that. And you can be like, okay, so it looks like my higher self is trying to tell me that I need a stone that's attributed to water or the ocean. And so once you kind of break it down from that, then maybe say, okay, can you get a little more specific? And then maybe from there, you'll get something else that you can use to kind of narrow down your information. So whether that be you just hear the word aqua, let's say. So then, okay, so maybe aquamarine or aqua aura quartz. Then you could even go back down to those two options and say, which one of these are you trying to show me that I need to work with? And then trust your intuition of where you're going with it. So I think that's one really simple way that you can do that without any tools or any added things, because it's really just simple, and that keeps it really simple. And that will also just help you kind of start to expand your intuition. And I think expand your kind of psychic connection to stones. It will expand your trust with just following what you need for crystals and how to work with them. Because yeah, I just think it's so much more fun, interesting, exciting, and when you kind of follow your own path with working with stones, I mean, that's what I've chosen to do. For a long time, I didn't know what I was doing. I was kind of confused, and I definitely was trying to follow maybe what other people had mentioned to me of what I should do. But the minute I just kind of let that go, and I really just followed whatever I was feeling drawn towards. That's when I've gotten the maximum benefit out of my crystals and working with them. So another thing you can do actually is even write this down in a journal before you go to sleep at night. So that could be like an intentional dream journaling prompt of some kind, or an intentional dream question. And you can say, can you show me my dream tonight? What stone I need to bring into my energy field? And then you could even write that down and place it under your pillow at night. And then the minute you wake up, no matter how random or weird your dream may be, write down what you get. And just like I was saying, it could be, most likely, it's going to be very symbolic. So it could be fire. A lot of times I feel like elements would come up with stones because they all kind of fit into different categories with the elements that they exude. So that could definitely be a big way to understand where you're going. So for example, if you see earth, that could be very grounding stones and anything that's in that kind of category. If you're seeing air, there's stones for that. Storms. There's all kinds of crystals that fit into those elements, and you can always research that as well to get a better understanding of kind of where your intuition is taking you. So that, and it could be color. And color, again, is obviously a really easy and helpful tool for stones. So again, it's kind of a similar idea to the meditation that I just brought up, but you could just do it in your dreams. And again, don't get discouraged if something doesn't show up in your dreams, because that doesn't happen all the time. I know that that's happened to me before, and it's kind of frustrating. But if that's the case, that's when I would maybe try doing the meditation that I just mentioned. And again, I think just playing around with a lot of different things and just see what kind of sticks for you and go with that. Because either of those things that I just mentioned may not be for you. But that's why I'm trying to kind of cover as many things as I can so that you can have at least a few options to start with. Hi, Georgette. Hi, Christy. Hi, Samantha. So another method I thought would be cool to share with you guys is actually using oracle cards. Now, again, you don't have to have a literal crystal oracle deck. Now, there are a few, and actually the one I'm going to show you is one. So I know that there's one by Colette Baron-Reid that I do not own personally, but I know she's really good, so that's another one you could try. The one that I have is actually by Judy Hall, so I'll show you right here, using the crystals. And these cards are great, and they're also great just in general for anything. You don't have to use them to figure out what crystals you need. These are actually, what I like about these cards, I actually got these pretty early on in my whole development journey. And what's nice about them is that they're very simple and they're very straightforward. And I think when anybody's kind of starting out, that can be very helpful, and it can just kind of help take down the intimidation factor when you're trying to work with oracle cards or just open your intuition up. Because especially now, I feel like just there's this huge surge of all types of oracle cards out there. And they're very complicated, and there's a lot of them, and there's like, I don't even know what to choose. So that's why I think when you're starting out with oracle cards, it's really helpful to just pick something that's like super simple, just like this. So for example, like I said, just very straightforward, one word, one image, one color, basics. Because also what I like about these, again, it's like it gives you the color, the stone, the word, and a number. And all of those you can work with to figure out how those are going to be represented in a symbolic way for you. Because again, everybody's different. Hi, Denise. And that can be a good way to start to build on that and to start to learn what your symbols are and what colors mean for you. And I think the thing with colors too is that a lot of times, sometimes people get stuck in, again, what people have told them colors are supposed to mean, and that can get very stuck in your mind. I feel like when it comes to symbolism in general, just from when we're receiving things from our intuition, you 100% need to just trust what you feel it's supposed to mean. So even if you get the color red, for example, and you've been told that that's supposed to be attributed to your root chakra and you need to ground, or that's what it's supposed to mean, if you're feeling something else attributed to that, trust that instead. Because you could maybe at some point use that again, and maybe it'll come up and it will feel right about, okay, this is for grounding, this is about the root chakra. But I know for me personally, like colors don't always really don't attribute themselves to the chakras for me when I'm doing readings. It depends, but usually I'll understand when that's happening. So again, kind of went on a tangent there, but basically what I'm trying to say is like when you're trying to expand your intuition and understand what you're receiving and why, it's just good to keep your horizons really broad and open. The more open, the better. Because it's when you start to focus in on things that you've already heard, things you've already been taught, that you're going to limit your intuition. You're going to shut yourself down, and you're also going to bring the analytic mind back into play here. So a great thing you could do is get a deck that is crystals if you want. So this is a really nice deck, and I actually got it at Barnes & Noble. So they actually have a lot of oracle cards. So that's a good place to go that I feel like is pretty accessible for most people. And just sit with yourself in the morning. I think I'm just going to pull one for everybody, just for an example. And just sit quietly and shuffle these. And while you're shuffling them, just try to have the intention of what stone do I need to bring into my awareness? Or what stone do I need today? Because that's something that I'll do since I have probably too many crystals. I have probably most crystals that are in this deck already. So I know for a time I would be doing like a meditation in the morning and then I'd pull one of these and that would be the stone that I would carry with me throughout the day. So that's also another way that you can use these. So let me just spread these out and then really just try to feel out whatever you get pulled to. So I got this. So this is pink granite, which is actually kind of a unique stone. And if you don't know where to find the stone that comes up, again, don't be discouraged. Try to research it if you can. I can read this for everybody because I feel like that was just came up for everyone and to share with them. But I really like this book. So, pink granite has the highest pragmagnetic resonance of all stones and creates immense energy. You are an ancient Egyptian with the arcane knowledge that the role entails, but you originated in the stars. You understand cycles of birth, death, and rebirth, and immortality. You have been involved in ancient power struggles. Cut yourself loose, become more grounded. Learning experiences occur regularly, and serendipitous synchronicities put you in exactly the right place at the right time. Be assertive and make things happen. Events move with surprising speed once you focus your intention. Set the whole picture before deciding. Be pragmatic and don't give your power away. Maintain balance in a relationship. You need diplomacy and tact. Lightning can strike twice. If dealing with ancient strife, look at the bigger picture. Everything must pass away. Death precedes transformation and rebirth. Hi, Shauna. And it says that the healing insight, oh, that was the healing insight. And then it says frequency, earthy and high. The chakra, all. Timing, out of the blue. And soul path, a lightning conductor for positive change. So this is a kind of an interesting, wrong page. An interesting deck, because it isn't that literal with like what the stone means or its healing properties. It's a little more out there or more broad and a little more symbolic too, which I kind of like about it. And that's also why I think these cards work good for just using as oracle cards. They don't have to be about crystals really. And that's why I wanted to read that just as an example for people. So that's one way, another way that you can use cards to help yourself expand your intuition and then also pick stones. Now, for example, let's say you don't want to get a deck that is literally crystals, you can do the same thing, just like what I've been saying with the other techniques, is just get any kind of deck that you feel drawn to. And then let's say like you have an animal deck, right? You can do the same thing and say, what crystal do you think I need in my energy field right now? Pick a card, and let's say you pull a tiger card. That'd probably be tiger's eye, right? So something like that, you can just, again, use whatever symbolism is in that deck to kind of guide your path of what stones you need to look towards. So again, that's another method I wanted to share. And then another one is a pendulum, which I have right here, and this is just an amethyst one that I got. And a pendulum, the nice thing about pendulums is that you can make one out of really anything. Anything that has some weight to it, on a string, on a chain. It doesn't have to be some expensive fancy thing for it to work. And in order to get kind of attuned to one is that you really just want to sit with it quietly and hold your hands still. And you're just going to say, show me yes, show me no, show me maybe. And everybody is going to have a different direction with the swing of it. For me, I believe yes is this way, no, it goes back and forth, and when it's maybe, it goes in a circle. And to kind of test out what that's going to be, you start by doing that, but then you can start by asking questions like, is my name Daisy? So things that you know are definitely yes, right? And then you'll see the pattern that it starts to have. And really, again, I feel like with the pendulum, it's just another tool to access your higher self. So it's just kind of tuning into your subconscious mind more than anything of what you need to know. Yeah, pendulums are great. I feel more compelled to work with herbs. Go for it. So a pendulum, you could just do a few things, right? So you could sit down quietly, like I've just been saying, and you can just ask it, what crystal do I need right now? Should it be rose quartz, let's say, and then see what it does. If you want, you can even, actually, yeah, this is a good way to do this. So like, let's say that you have had a dream or you had in meditation, the example that I had given you before, where you got pulled to stones of the ocean, right? But you're not sure what crystal in particular from that kind of category you really want. So you could research a few of the stones that are associated with the ocean. So like I had said before, Larimar, aquamarine, aqua aura quartz, azamar, those stones. There's plenty more, but you can just start with a list. And then you could even write them on note cards and lay them out in front of you. And you could do it that way where you basically sit down and you just hold the pendulum over each card and see what it does. Or you can simply read off a list of those stones and just sit there and ask it and say, are you saying that I need this stone? Are you saying I need this stone? And just see what it does. So I think that could be a really good method for choosing crystals when you're not sure what direction to take. Because again, I think that's the other thing, is that it can be very overwhelming. And when you're starting out with your intuition, when you're still trying to learn how to trust it, you're still trying to learn what direction to take, and you want to really be specific about what crystal you're looking for, that's when these kinds of tools are really, really helpful with that. And over time, as you do this practice, as you work with that, it's going to get a lot easier. And you'll start to see patterns with yourself, and you'll start to understand, okay, now I kind of know that when I said this crystal, right, and my pendulum said yes, I got this feeling in my solar plexus or something, right? Or I got this tingling feeling at the back of my neck or the top of my spine. That's something that I get a lot. So that kind of thing, right? So you can start to associate things that happen when you're on the right track, or let's say when you get a no. And over time, like, I would just write all of those things down. And as something keeps happening, if you get a pattern that you start to notice, you're going to get better at knowing what to expect or knowing what you're feeling when you're trying to understand something or when you're trying to pick a direction to go. And that's a great way to just start to kind of, it's these building blocks that you kind of start to stack on top of one another to be able to really build that intuition and really trust it. Because again, for me, I know in the beginning of all of this stuff, I was just overwhelmed and anxious and I didn't know what I was doing, right? I was just super confused and had no idea what to trust, what I was doing. And it took a long time, but it just took a lot of persistence and doing something over and over again and starting to notice, oh, okay, I feel this way when this is happening, and now I know what that means. And again, it's just also trusting yourself and knowing that your body is this amazing tool. It's so much more than just your physical body. It's a radio. It's this incredible energetic tool that is trying to show you so many things that we often just overlook throughout any kind of day, right? And the more we're able to kind of slow down and just pick up on these little nuances to really help us just enrich our intuition, enrich what we're doing, and it can really, and then you can take that and apply it to everything in your life. Relationships, work, projects, money, whatever it could be, you can apply these tools to everything, and I guarantee you it's going to make your life feel to have a much easier flow to it as well. So then I think, well, okay. Oh, yeah. And so then that was some of the ones that I had. And then another one I was thinking, so some people do, this is something that I'm not crazy about all the time, but one thing that people do is like muscle testing. So basically where you're taking two fingers like this, right, and you're creating a ring, two rings, and you put them over a stone and you say, is this right for me? And you try to pull them apart. Now, if they pull apart, then it's a no. If they stay together, it's a yes. So again, this is just another thing that you can try to do. It may not resonate with you, and that's okay, but I would just try really anything because you never know. And then another way to do it too, so is also just being pulled by energy. So for example, let's say that we're in a crystal shop. Again, those types of places can be really overwhelming. And depending on the kind of people that work there, sometimes they can be very helpful. So you could always talk to somebody and see, hey, I'm looking for a crystal for this or that. Do you have any suggestions? And you can see what they offer for you. If they're not so helpful, then again, it's okay. Because I think one of the best ways to navigate those spaces is, again, to just tap into the physical sensations and the physical pulls that you're getting in the space. Now, this may be something that you kind of almost go to after you've started those other practices I just talked about. Because, for example, this is a little more free form, right? So it's going to kind of rely more on your trust of your own intuition and the cues that you're picking up on. So after some time and you build up this intuition and this practice and you start to understand these different cues that you get and you know what they mean. Shauna, I'm going to talk about that in just a second, so I will definitely answer that. So let's say we know now that when a yes is obvious for us with a stone, we get that tingling sensation at the top of our spine, okay? And that's great, so now we know that. And we go into a shop, and then we ask our higher self, or spirit, or whoever you want to ask, what stone do I need in this store right now that's going to benefit me? What do you want me to be guided to? And just start walking around the store very slowly, and kind of even, you could even wave your hand around the tables or shelves, even the cases that have stones, and just start to just take your time and be really quiet with yourself and really pay attention to what you're feeling. And sometimes this may happen really rapidly and be very obvious, and you'll be immediately drawn to something, and you know that that's the one. You feel that sensation at the top of your spine, and that's the one you're getting. That's awesome. Sometimes it's not as simple, and sometimes you may need to spend a little longer kind of going over the store more than once even, right? So also, you could be drawn to more than one stone, which is also okay. I mean, that's my excuse, right, for buying maybe more than one crystal. But again, that's okay. You could be drawn to more than one stone at that time as well. But really just take your time. And if you feel compelled to, if you feel pulled to something, I would suggest picking it up and just holding it for a while. You could even hold it while you walk around and look at the rest of the store, whatever you want to do. And give yourself a minute to kind of attune to it, and if you feel really connected with it, then that's probably the one that you're supposed to get. If not, then put it back and try doing that again. So again, that's a good way to just kind of feel your way around a store that can be sometimes a little overwhelming with choices. So for me, I know that's often what I'll do. As a collector, I obviously have a list of like some specific stones that I'm always kind of looking for my collection. But ultimately, when I go to a place shopping for stones, I'm always going to have that list in the back of my mind, but then I also just look in general at what's available and what's around me. And I often always pick something that wasn't on my list or something that I wasn't expecting to find that I'm just very drawn to. And often when I take it home and I research the crystal more, it makes perfect sense for what I'm needing at that time in my life. So again, this is just something that I think takes time. It's something to build up, and it's something to just practice. And you don't have to buy the crystals to practice this. It's also just a good space to just hang out and feel good. I mean, I think those stores always feel really good for me because you're just surrounded by crystals. So you can even just hang out in a crystal shop for an hour or something just to kind of look around and practice these feelings. Go around, feel what you're feeling, feel what you're pulled to, and take note of that, and then you can leave. You don't have to buy them. But again, just the more that you expose yourself to those experiences and that kind of energy, the easier it's going to get to trust what you're getting, trust what you're being pulled towards, and to just really trust that intuition. So then another one, yeah, so I think overall those are like my main things that I wanted to share with you for picking crystals. And again, if you have any other things that you do yourself that you want to share with us, I would love that. Just put it in the comments. And then the next thing that I was going to talk about was cleansing. So Shauna had just asked, how often do you cleanse your crystals? So yeah, so I'm going to go over that. So basically, that's another one that I think can get really, really overwhelming because I've seen so many articles, rules, things where people say, make sure you cleanse your crystal, or, it's going to be a terrible thing or something, or they're not going to work as well, whatever, or you have to do it this way, you have to do it that way, you can't not cleanse them, you can't. There's all kinds of different rules, and I remember when I was starting out, I was just really overwhelmed with that. But I'm just going to share a few of the things that I've known to work for me and some other options too. So one of the main ways that I cleanse my crystals is with sage and Palo Santo. So I just have my little shell bowl here. And I'll just give you an example because I'll just usually light some Palo Santo. Just like that. And sometimes I go through phases with that. Sometimes I'm very drawn to use sage, and other times I'm really drawn to this. So it depends. And again, these are like the two probably most popular forms of cleansing smudges, but there's so many others available that you could even use. The sage that I actually have has some copal in it, which is a form of tree resin that I really like because it almost has this menthol-y kind of effect. And there's obviously sweetgrass, there's all types of other blends of sage and so forth. So, okay, so let's say you just want to sit quietly with some stones that you've been carrying a lot on you, right? Or something where you get this feeling that they maybe need a little cleansing. And I just light the Palo Santo. And what I love about the smoke too is that you can just see how it just kind of envelops the stone on every angle without you really having to do much of anything. And again, I use intuition for this process just as much as anything else. I'll hold it under the smoke until I feel a shift in energy and until I really feel that it's been cleansed. So again, I use intuition with that, especially with the cleansing of stuff. And again, you can also use that when you're trying, yeah, I love the smell too. I'm obsessed with it. Because often with stones, not all of them are going to need to be cleansed 24/7. I remember, again, like when I was carrying like a little bag with me of crystals to work every day, I would sage them every night when I would get home from work. And that was just because I was in an area that was like very chaotic and very dense energetically. So I just felt like I needed that. And that's totally fine. But over time, as I left that job and now I carry stones maybe a little less commonly, like with that much, or I don't carry stones in environments like that as much as I used to. So I don't need to cleanse them maybe as much as I did in the past. So that will also just shift with your lifestyle and like what you're using your crystals for too. So again, I often will cleanse the stones when I just get a feeling. It's kind of hard to explain, and again, I think it's going to be different for everybody. But often I'll just get a feeling with a stone. You can even just pick one up, right, and just hold one and just ask it, do you need to be cleansed right now? Are you overwhelmed with energy? Is there something that we need to do to reset this? If you get a yes, then go for it. If not, then maybe it can wait. So again, I would really just say to really trust intuition when it comes to knowing when to cleanse your stones. Now, there are some that are also known to be just self-cleansing. Now, selenite is probably one of the more popular stones that are known for that. And I think you'll see because there's a lot of like selenite charging plates, they usually call them. And that's something where you can actually put your crystals on to cleanse them. Because selenite just kind of self-cleanses. Now, probably a lesser known stone that does that is also halite, which is, again, that's actually a form of salt. So any crystal or mineral that's salt-based is also a wonderful cleanser. Now, that's also why sometimes people will recommend that you put your crystals in a bowl of sea salt to cleanse them, and then you remove the sea salt after maybe being in that overnight. Now, another one I know has been like rice, for example, just basic rice. That's another thing that you can put in a bowl. So you could do rice or salt and bury your crystals that you want to cleanse in there. Now, the good thing about that process is it's good for stones that are maybe, let's say, very sensitive or delicate to different other cleansing methods. For example, some people really, really love cleansing their crystals under running water. That's never been one that I've been super drawn to. The only thing that I'll do sometimes is that I'll bring some crystals that I feel like I want to bring with me outdoors in the middle of the woods somewhere, and I'll cleanse them under a waterfall or something. That's kind of the only thing I've ever done with that. But as far as doing it under like a sink or running water, it's just not been something that I've been that drawn to. But there's plenty of people that feel very drawn to doing that method, and that's totally fine. I think it's just as effective. But sometimes that method is not going to be good for certain types of crystals because they are very sensitive to water. Now, selenite actually is one of those stones. Again, since we know that it doesn't really need cleansing, that's okay. But there are plenty other stones out there that can be very delicate to water. So that's why actually burying them in the salt or the rice is a really good way and a good alternative for cleansing your crystals that are going to be more sensitive to other types of forms of cleansing. So I would recommend that if you're somebody that's really drawn to water as your cleanser, to just make sure that you're researching your stones more. One of the easiest ways I think to find out is there's like a hardness scale that people will follow in science, I believe. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely in science for each crystal. And there's a lot of stuff, like for example, quartz is one of the top, has the highest hardness on that scale. So it can basically tolerate a lot. Even for example, like I do a lot of electroforming, so that's where you're putting stuff on a copper acid solution and it's getting plated onto the stone. And quartz can actually withstand that acid bath without getting damaged. However, there are many other crystals that I've done that with where I have to actually coat them in silicone before I put them in the bath. Otherwise, it will eat away at them. So that's a really good way to kind of find out what stones can tolerate water or not. Or you can literally just type in, can this stone be put in water? And for the most part, there's a lot of information out there. If you guys have any questions on crystals that you're maybe not finding that information on, definitely feel free to message me and let me know, and I'll try my best to help you with that. But again, I think probably the best bet with that is that if you're unsure, just use the safer methods, which would be, again, saging or using some form of smudge or smoke, burying them in rice or salt. And then another one I was going to share is actually with sound. Now, sound, I think, is one of the easiest and one of the most effective ways to cleanse stones. And what I really like about this method as well is that if you're somebody like me that's a crazy crystal lady and you have thousands of crystals, it's just not realistic for me anymore to sit for a week, right, and to cleanse each individual stone with smoke. It's just not going to happen. It's just not realistic for me, unfortunately. That's something that I used to be able to do. And the thing is that I'll sage some stones. Let's say, for example, if I have a piece of jewelry like this, right, that I've been wearing every day, then yeah, that's something that I would probably smudge with sage. And that goes for also stones that I may be carrying in my pocket with me throughout the day that I've just been using recently. Then usually, yes, I'll use sage. Again, sometimes I take, ritual baths with stones in them, and right after the bath, I will cleanse them with sage so that anything that they absorbed, I just kind of purify out. That's just part of my ritual with that. And then also, if I use stones as a healing tool in a reading, for example, or I use them as a body layout tool, I will always smudge them immediately afterwards. So that's just how I am with that. But then when it comes to my regular collection that's in my apartment, that is not as frequent anymore. But the most common way that I do it, I probably cleanse them, I don't know, I want to say maybe once a week or something. Sometimes less than that though. Because also, this is the other thing. I feel like when your stones are existing in your own space for an extended period of time, they become realigned with your environment and your energy. And then they kind of harmonize with each other. And they're all kind of working together, they all kind of vibe together, and they become a part of your energy. They start to pick up on your energy and they reprint all of that within them. So when they're in your space like this and they're not being used in the ways that I just shared on other people, outside of your home, whatever, they don't necessarily need to be cleansed that often because they're kind of realigned with your space. And if you're in a good spot with yourself, if your life is going good, then especially I don't think you would really need to cleanse them that often as maybe you might think. However, if, for example, you're going through a very tumultuous time in your life and there's a lot of chaos in your home and there's just a lot of negativity going on, then I would say, yeah, that's when you would want to cleanse them maybe a little bit more to try to bring them back into a state of kind of equilibrium and more positive energy. But again, that's the kind of amazing thing about stones when they're living with you in your environment, is that how they kind of absorb and record all the different phases and periods of your life, whether they be good or bad, and they kind of retain that information. And that's not necessarily a bad thing either. That's the thing. We don't always need to just eradicate everything that's in a crystal, even if it's negative. Because I think one thing to recognize is that, for example, I have crystals in my apartment that have definitely been through periods in my life that were definitely not very positive and were quite difficult, right? And the thing is, though, is that I don't necessarily want to remove that because, again, it's a part of my energy that's been imprinted on them. And they have been a part of that whole journey and that whole process of healing, of letting that whole thing go, of healing out of that negativity. And it's just a part of having information. And if anything, it's actually a vital piece of information to use for shadow work or work that's more kind of in-depth or negative necessarily, because we need to pay attention to that stuff too. So we don't always just want to bypass the negative energy that we may have recorded in our stones. So again, those can be used as a tool just as much as the positive energy. So I think that that's something definitely to mention because, again, we don't always need, sometimes the negative stuff can be more helpful than the positive. So I know for me, certain crystals that actually changed the way they look internally after going through a traumatic period with me, again, I use them for a tool if I want to let go of maybe some stuff with PTSD even or things like that. They can be a great tool for that. So that's just something I wanted to definitely put out there, is that we don't always have to be so panicked or worried about getting rid of this negative energy that we're perceiving in our stones. It's more just, I mean, more than anything, it's really our intuition. It's mental in a lot of ways. And that's actually another thing. Well, all right, I'll finish with see, I can get overwhelmed with everything I'm sharing. But I'll share the sound healing cleansing method. So the thing that I like about the sound healing is that if you have a lot of stones, like me, this is one of the quickest ways to cleanse all of them in basically no time, because you just do this, right? And I'm just holding that near an area where I have a lot of crystals, and I can do it however long I want, and I do the same thing where I'll do that until I feel a shift in my energy, and I'll know, okay, this feels like it's good now. Now, the reason that sound is so effective is because it's basically shaking your crystals at a molecular level that shakes them up and basically shakes off all of the energy that isn't maybe aligned with their original structure in some ways, and it's kind of just vibrating that off of them, and then they're resetting. So it's really, really effective. You have a bell, that's great. I actually have a bell too, and that's what I was using until I just got the singing bowl not that long ago. So yeah, it can even be drums or a guitar. That's kind of the cool thing. You can do any kind of sound. It could even be music, literally just music. So you could even have a recording. Let's say you don't have a singing bowl, but you feel compelled to use that sound. You can use a recording of singing bowls. And it's usually, I mean, it really should be just as effective. Yep, Samantha, yes. So I just, that's exactly what I was just saying. So you can absolutely use music electronically. Of course, it can be a little more effective, I think, to use something that's physical. So if you don't have a singing bowl, though, just like what Shauna had just said, you can use a bell. You could even use a drum. You could use even like a glass, right? Like a wine glass or something, where you touch it with a wet hand and just play it almost like a regular singing bowl. So you can be really creative with that. It's really anything that's going to create a kind of high-pitched frequency is going to be effective for that method. So that could even be, again, also like a tuning fork, or I mean, there's a lot of things, right? We can really kind of get creative with that. So of course, it does not require you to have any form of like expensive singing bowl or fancy tool in order for it to be effective. I think that's the other thing that I really try to show people, is that you don't have to spend like an immense amount of money to get all these fancy tools to cleanse things or for things to work, right? At the end of the day, we also actually don't need any of these tools, which is the other thing that I was going to say. These tools are great if they resonate with you, if they work for you, awesome. And for me, that's kind of how it works. I just feel very drawn to that method, and that's what I use. Again, though, I think something that I don't think anybody, I rarely hear this out there as information, but believe it or not, you can cleanse stones with your mind and just by yourself. So I'll show you that. So basically, let's say I feel that this stone has some energy that I want to just clear out. All it takes, really, is just sitting quietly with the stone, and you can have your eyes closed, or you can actually have a soft gaze on the stone itself, and just talk to yourself internally, or even to your higher self, or higher power, whoever you want to, and you can just say, I want to have the intention of clearing any of the energy that is no longer serving this crystal, and just to remove it. And just sit with that. And you can imagine this in many different ways. You can have these kind of visualizations in your mind. So something like, you can imagine like a magnet going over the crystal and pulling out different debris. You can think, sometimes actually one of the imagery that I use when I'm healing people is I imagine a gutter that's like clogged with leaves, and I imagine a big rainstorm pushing all of that debris out of the gutter system, which I mean, maybe isn't the most like pretty, right? But it's effective, at least to me. So you can imagine all different types of things like that. You could even imagine like looking at a bowl of dirty water and then imagining it turning crystal clear. So different visualizations like that can also really just help with the intention of what you're trying to do. And just sit with that and just try to really notice when you start to feel a shift. Yeah, so Shauna's saying that she'll blow on her crystal too. Yeah, that's absolutely something that you can do as well. It really can be anything. But again, yeah, you can do the visualization, you can use air, you can even chant. So again, you could use yourself as that instrument for sound, like I was saying before. And again, I always just feel a shift in my stone when I know that it's cleared. And again, that's going to be different, I think, for everybody. But the more you do it, the more aligned or the more obvious and apparent it's going to start to become. You'll start to know this pattern, and you'll start to recognize what that feels like when a stone is cleared or when it maybe needs clearing. The mind is so powerful. Absolutely. It is way more powerful than any of us ever realize. And I think that's something that I really, really try to help other people see, because I think that's one of the things that a lot of other information that's out there kind of pulls us away from. I think there's so much out there now because things have become very popularized in the metaphysical world now, and just, I think, continues to increase. And we start to forget that we are the best tool available. There's no money that can compare to the tool that is in our body right now and ready to be used. So absolutely. And then I just want to make sure that I got everything I was saying. Yeah, and then I guess one other thing I was going to talk about was intention setting on crystals. So this is good for when, let's say, we've done all these things that I've already talked about, and we've picked a stone, we've brought it home, and we're ready to work with it, but we're like, what do I do? So one of the things that you could do is definitely tune into another video that I'm going to do where it's going to be a guided meditation to connect with a stone that you're really wanting to just have a deeper connection to and understand what its purpose is for you. So that's one thing that we'll definitely be doing later on. But again, there's a lot of information out there talking about intention setting, right? And there's some people that think that you absolutely have to set an intention on the crystal when you get it. Otherwise, it's not going to work for you. I completely disagree with that belief. Again, if that works for you, that's totally fine. I just feel that for me, is that when you get a stone, I think that it's way smarter than maybe sometimes we give it credit for. And it's connecting with you at a molecular level that we can't even understand or perceive. And I really feel that the crystal is going to know basically right away what you need from it, and it's going to align with that. But I think, of course, a good way to strengthen that understanding and to strengthen that connection with it is to definitely work with it, sit with it, meditate with it when you first get it. I do recommend always cleansing crystals when I first buy them, because that is when they're going to have other energies on them from the previous owners or wherever it came from. So I always try to kind of cleanse it out. And I think it kind of takes about a month period, I would say, of living in your space for it to be completely realigned with you. However, there's other energy that it's going to have that's ancient that I don't think that you should ever get rid of. And I don't really think you can, because I think that's the kind of stuff that you don't want to get rid of. And that's where there's a lot of really wonderful information and healing properties and beings you can connect with from that ancient stuff that's recorded in them. So we don't want to try to get rid of that. It's more just resetting the intention from this new space that it's coming into and realigning it with yours. But yeah, I would just say that you can connect with it as much as you want. But again, I really feel that crystals are very smart, infinitely smart, and they know what you'll need. And again, I think that intention setting is great if you want to do it. So I think the thing is that the stone will know what to do, and you don't really need to do much of anything except for just connecting with it and trusting that it's going to be helping you and it's going to do whatever it feels is right for you. And that's great. However, if you want to make that intention stronger and you're trying to work on something, let's say like manifestation, or really working towards building a energy in your life, let's say success or love, if that's something that you're really, really looking to kind of build up, intention setting can be great for that. So that's why, basically intention setting is just where you're going to sit with a crystal in meditation and you're just going to say, this is what I'm hoping that you can help me with. This is my intention that I want to be setting on this tool. Thank you so much for bringing this energy into my life and for me to be able to use it, and just having this sense of gratitude and connection with your crystal, and knowing that it's really here to help you with whatever you want it to help you with. So it doesn't have to be some crazy ritual in order to set an intention either. So again, you can just write down the one thing or a few things and sit in meditation and just basically talk to your crystal about what you're hoping for when you have it now in your space. And again, like I said, that's not necessary though for it to work. They are very smart. They're like computers, basically. Probably a bit smarter than computers, right? I don't want to give computers that much credit. They are going to know what you need. So that was just another thing that I was going to share. And then I was going to just start to touch on a few other things that you can do with them. And let me just check on my comments here so I'm not seeing here. I've heard it's 90% intention with our practices. Yeah, absolutely, Sherry. Yeah. That's great, Patty. So Patty's just saying she pictures a vapor evaporating from her stone. So again, that's exactly like what I was talking about. That's perfect. It's been repackaged for consumption. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, Shauna. Perfect, Sherry. Oh, thanks, Shauna. That's perfect. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Shauna. Um, yeah, no, again, that's the thing. It can be whatever we want, and that's the most exciting part about it. So, oh yeah, and I didn't show you guys my feather, but you don't need a feather. But this was actually something I was just going to show you. If you're like me and you have a lot of crystals, this is one way that you could also try to kind of smudge multiple crystals in one time. For me, it's not the most effective thing. I use this more for just like cleansing my space. Because even when I'm kind of doing this and I'm waving it over multiple stones, I just don't feel like it's enveloping them in the way that I like, and it just doesn't feel like good enough. That's just me. So again, that's just another thing you could use. So the last thing that I was going to go over was gridding your stones. So again, that's another thing that's very popular now. I think basically every crystal shop that I've been to now, you'll usually find a gridding kit of some kind that's going to have something like a sacred geometry printout of an image. Sometimes it'll be on fabric. Sometimes it will look something like that. So these I'm going to try to have, I'm going to start trying to make some gridding tools and having them on my site, which is daisyfarrell.com. Now, that's something that I'm going to go into when I'm done talking about this. But yeah, so you can find really anything. But again, it doesn't have to be a gridding tool or a kit. You don't need that to grid your crystals properly or for it to be effective. It can just be pretty and nice, and sometimes it can just be helpful to use the sacred geometry to align certain things. Again, you don't have to use sacred geometry either. It's whatever you're going to feel compelled towards. Because sometimes I know people will use sacred geometry and they'll pick specific ones based on something that they're trying to manifest or something that they're very drawn towards. But again, not necessary. And of course, you don't have to buy some expensive sacred geometry thing. If you want to, go for it. But you could also just print it out on your computer and use that, right? It doesn't have to be anything crazy. And again, it doesn't have to be a pattern at all. You could also just have a basic piece of wood like this that's in a circle. Or as long as you just have a big enough space for whatever you're trying to make, it could be something big or small, but as long as you have a space that's going to be undisturbed and not messed with, you're basically good to go. It doesn't need to be anything complicated at all. And when it comes to gridding, there's definitely things out there that have like a very specific formula for how you're supposed to do gridding, and that you need to use this mixture of stones, this many types of stones, and so forth. Again, as I think you probably see the theme here, I don't think that that's necessary. You can absolutely do that if that's something that you want to do. But really for me, when I do a grid, I just go with whatever I'm trying to kind of manifest, what my intention is towards my grid. So let's say I want to manifest more love, and that could be self-love or something. So I'm going to just kind of walk around my apartment and my collection, and I just start to pick stones that I feel, first of all, just compelled to bring into this grid, and then stones that I know that are going to fit well with that intention that I'm trying to bring from doing this grid. And then I'll sit down, I'll find my space that I'm going to make my grid. It will be on something like this, or it will just be on an empty space. And I just try to put on some nice music. I try to really set the tone in my environment, in my space. I think that's one thing too that's important when making a grid, is that you want to kind of have the right intention energetically in your space, within yourself, when you're doing them. Because I just think that really adds to the intention and the power and the effectiveness of a grid. For example, if you're trying to make a grid based on self-love and you're really pissed off and you're like feeling really overwhelmed and angry and you're making this grid all pissed off, it's probably not going to be very effective. So that's just something I think to be mindful of when you're trying to work with grids, is be really, just be very aware of your energy at that moment when you're trying to do it. Again, some people really like to do grids when it's a full moon or a new moon or a specific date that they find is very powerful for them, whether that be due to astrology or something else, or even like a religious practice, right? It could be whatever you want. That's also definitely something that you can do if you feel that a certain day has more power for you, or even a certain time of day. Again, you can really customize this in a way that's really kind of fun. So find a time that works for you. And again, but if you feel the energy's off, don't force it. that's something that I really would say is just, if you feel like, let's say, we set up this whole intention that I'm going to do this great crystal grid on this new moon, and it's going to happen that night, and something really crappy happens, and you're in a very bad mood all of a sudden, but you're like, but I promised myself I would do this. I got to do it because otherwise I'm not going to harness the power of this moon. I still, if you feel like you can kind of overcome and maybe meditate for a while and shed away the stuff that happened during the day that's upsetting you, then maybe that's all right. But really pay attention to your energy. If that doesn't go away and you're still feeling really consumed by something, I just wouldn't do it probably. It's not that the grid won't work, but it's just not going to be as effective. I just think, okay, you know what? The energy is off. There's plenty of new moons to work with that are going to happen in the future. So it's not like it's the only new moon that's ever going to happen and you're going to miss out on it. Trust me, I've done that many times where I miss out. I think I'm missing out on this energy, but ultimately it's not true. I mean, you can get just as much energy at really any time that you do a grid. It's because it's your intention that's going to bring that energy. It's not the time of day, the moon. All of that stuff can amplify and be great. However, it's you that, you are the one creating this grid and creating that intention. So ultimately, that's the most important thing with gridding to me. So again, wait until the time feels aligned for you. And let's say, that the example I gave where you have a bad night and it doesn't end up working out and you just think, okay, you know what? It's not meant to be. I'm going to wait until tomorrow and see how I feel. And let's say we just wait until the next morning and we wake up and we feel great. And for a new moon, that energy is still definitely potent the next day. So it's not even like you're really missing out on that anyway. And you can just have a nice morning with yourself and make your grid. And I guarantee you it will be a lot better and you'll probably feel the effect way more. Flower of Life pattern and now I grid work. Oh, that's wonderful, Sean. I love that. Yeah, so just like what Sean was saying, like she's made her own tools too, which again, I really encourage. I think that's such a great way to really just infuse your own energy into stuff. So yeah, and then I think kind of a basic formula to follow for grids is that I'll put kind of my master crystal in the middle of it. So the one that I really think embodies my intention for that grid. And then I'll use usually anything that has kind of a point. So usually quartz points. And you can very easily get kind of a bulk bag of quartz points. I definitely recommend, again, it's not necessary, but I definitely recommend naturally double terminated quartz points. And it doesn't have to be clear quartz, it could be any kind of quartz. Because I just find that those are the most effective energetically for any kind of gridding. And that also goes for body layouts. Just because they have an even exchange of energy on both ends. So I definitely recommend those as I think one of the most powerful tools you can use on a grid. And then I'll usually just kind of splay it out and just go, again, with what I am, with what my intention is. And I'll just have the stones that I had collected with me next to me, and I'll just allow my hand to guide me energetically with what I need to put and where. And I just trust that. So you can do that, and then you could even light a candle or something and do a meditation on this grid to just enhance the power of it after you've created it, and then leave it in your space until you feel that it's fulfilled its purpose. So this could be 2 days, it could be a month. I think, again, it's all about what you're feeling from it. If you feel like it's fulfilled what it needs to do, then you can take it down and you can use those crystals for something else. I do think in that kind of situation, I would probably cleanse the crystals after finishing a grid to kind of reset them again. So that's kind of some basic tips I have for grids. Now, again, there's other forms of grids. So people also use grids for their home. Again, that one I think even more than anything can get really convoluted and just very overwhelming because people are saying you need to have this type of point, this kind of citrine in the north area of your home for finances, or you need, which I'm not saying is the right one, but it's just an example. People will say it has to be in the south corner, the west corner, the east corner in order for it to be effective or for this specific thing. Again, if that's the method you want to use, that's awesome and you can do that. For me, that's not something that I really follow. I did at the time, but again, this is just a theme in general with me. Whenever I've tried to like follow a system or a set of rules from another person or a book or something, when it comes to even reading tarot cards or doing like crystal work, the energy ends up getting cut off for me because I'm so in my human mind and I'm so focused on, okay, I got to make sure that this is going in the north corner and is that the right corner? I end up not actually being in my intuition at all. And I feel like that really kind of defeats the purpose for me. However, if you're really great at directions and everything, and maybe that's much more natural for you than me, then it might work great for you. I just know for me that sometimes that energy might be a little bit off, and then I feel like I don't get the maximum benefit out of gridding my home that way. So for me, I kind of just, again, like with doing the grids that I was talking about before, I just go with what I feel compelled towards, and I go where I think it needs to be in my home. Really basically as simple as that. For a time, I know I had like black tourmaline and stuff outside my front door to kind of do some type of protection for negativity or whatever. I've evolved a lot more kind of past that now, where I'm not as concerned with blocking out negative energy or anything. That was much more kind of fear-based at the time. So I don't have that anymore. But again, it can just be even just to help ground your home, or to just kind of, you know, it can create this level of ascension or this energy when you just kind of align crystals in different corners of your home and just do that with intention and just kind of walk in the center of this in your home and see what it feels like. If it feels a little off, then you can be like, okay, I feel like I need to shift this over here, or maybe I want to move this over here, or maybe I want to add something. Then go back to that same spot, feel it. Does this feel good? Then maybe stick with it. And again, you can keep that up for a year or a couple of days. It's really based on what you're feeling. And there's a lot of different reasons that people grid their home too. Some people even put crystals in their garden to help their plants. I actually have a few stones out in my the front of my door there for plants, and just to bring kind of good energy to that area. And again, I kind of already have gridding in my home without meaning to, just because I have so many crystals. I basically already have crystals all over the place, kind of creating their own energy pattern, and I kind of align them in my home with what I feel drawn towards. So again, I kind of have a grid in my home without really with the intention, right? It's just kind of the way that they are in my space. Which was also the one thing I wanted to touch on was what stones should you have in what rooms? Again, that's another thing that I see a lot of articles on, and saying like, never have this crystal in your bedroom or you'll have nightmares, or never have this or that. Again, I think it's very individual and worth actually just kind of feeling out what works for you. I know for me, when I was initially opening up to stuff, I had like my entire crystal collection right next to my bed, which was not good for me. And I would not recommend that really for anybody, especially if you're sensitive though, because I slept terribly and it was just too much energy right next to my bed. So although I still have quite a bit of crystals in my bedroom, the ones that I have directly next to me are all something that's conducive to sleep. So for example, I have dream quartz, I have blue calcite, and I have lepidolite all on my nightstand. And those are like the main crystals that are closest to me when I'm sleeping. Now, the other stones, they're a little further away on an altar that's near my bed, but they're not, you know, super far away. And then I have a few on my dresser and probably some under my bed. If I'm not, I might have some too under there. But for the most part, I've kind of done a lot of trial and error of what I feel compelled to put next to me when I'm sleeping. And the thing is with me too is that it kind of changes, because sometimes I'll just randomly decide to put a crystal under my pillow and I'll be tossing and turning and I cannot sleep and I'll have to take it out and put it back. Other times I'll do that and it doesn't bother me and I fall asleep and it's great. So I kind of shift around, you know, throughout the day or just throughout a week, right? And I might change what I'm feeling. Overall, the ones that have been on my nightstand, that's worked for me now for a solid year. So I've been very happy with that selection. And it may change eventually. But again, I think it's very much kind of what you're feeling pulled to. I would, however, I do definitely recommend that you put relaxing stones or stones that are known to soothe anxiety next to your bed, because that's just going to be helpful in general, I think. But when you have something that's like super high vibration next to your bed, it might make things a little bit challenging for sleep, or just make it may enhance your dreams where they feel a little less kind of refreshing. Because I think, I don't know if some of you know, like when you're like lucid dreaming, for example, which sometimes happens to me, I'll kind of wake up feeling like I didn't sleep because I was so active in my dreams. So they can do that too. So again, it's just kind of trial and error with that. I have a similar thing with like my bathroom. Like I'll have very relaxing crystals in there. I have a lot of rose quartz and chlorite phantom crystals in there. A lot of green calcite as well. So a lot of kind of heart-centered crystals. And then in my art studio, I have all the crystals for mental energy and creativity. So I have a lot of like carnelian, golden apatite. I have blue apatite for the mental facilities. I have quite a few stones in there just to kind of enhance the level of inspiration in that room. So I just think when it comes to picking crystals for the rooms of your home or using them for gridding, again, it's just kind of personal preference more than anything. And then the last thing, because I have been talking for a while, I could talk, as I think most of you can see, I could probably talk for 80 hours. But the last thing that I will go over is just body gridding with crystals, which is another tool that I think so many people could benefit from, but I think sometimes people are a little overwhelmed or don't know what to do. And again, no rules with that either. I really just think pick when you have, okay, let's say you feel really compelled to do a body layout on yourself even, right? And you're feeling really good, things are feeling aligned, and you know that you're going to have a solid hour, but it can be definitely less than that. It doesn't have to be a whole hour. But you feel that you'll have some time where you won't be disturbed, and do whatever you want to kind of set the intention in your room, set up the space. I'll put on like meditative music. I'll try to light some incense even, and maybe put some essential oils on, and then kind of walk around and pick up the stones that you're feeling drawn towards. Then lay down on something comfortable and just start by placing them on the lower part of your body. And they also don't have to be directly on your body. I think that's the other thing. They can be around you. And actually, sometimes that could be even more effective. It's like if you have some on and around you, because they'll be interacting with each other kind of in this wave of like this current of energy going through and out of your body. And also that's, again, also paying attention to like the auric field, right? And the more etheric layers that exist beyond our physical self. So that's something that you can also do. Now, sometimes people like to do this stuff based on the chakras. So they'll do grounding stones towards the bottoms of their feet and so forth. So, you know, they'll do stones that correlate with each color of the chakras, which again is another tool that I had brought up the other video, that you can use colors as a form of, you know, figuring out what you need when it comes to the chakras. Because that's usually a good, safe way to kind of pick stones, is based off of color in correlation with the benefits or the things and properties related to that associated chakra. But again, so you can use that as a layout. I often don't really do that. I kind of just do my own thing. Sometimes though, I will use rhodozite, which I did share in the other video if you guys are interested in learning more about that. And you can put that on each chakra center just to kind of purify them, reset them, and cleanse them. But again, I usually just kind of go with whatever crystals I'm feeling drawn towards. I almost always put one on my forehead because it just feels good for me. And I'll put one in each hand to kind of create that current of energy through my arms. And I'll usually have one above my head and in my stomach area and also by my feet. And again, I also highly recommend the naturally double terminated points for body layouts as well, because they are excellent healing tools because they have this flow of energy through both points, which is what makes them really helpful. Now, you can have a friend help you with this too, because sometimes it can be a little tricky to do it to yourself, especially if you have a bunch of little ones that you're trying to kind of align on your body. So yeah, I mean, ask a friend for help if you want to. You could even take turns doing a layout for each other, right? And one thing that I really like doing, I'll do this when I do Reiki on people, is sometimes I'll do a crystal layout on them, I'll do the Reiki, and then to kind of finish it off, I'll actually use my singing bowl to vibrate the stones that are on their body. And I find that that's really effective and people really respond to that quite well. So that's kind of my recommendations for body layouts. And I think that's basically everything I wanted to cover today. But again, let's see, let me just look at my comments here. Oh wow, Shauna. That's awesome. Yep. Yeah, amethyst is good for sleep. Mm-hmm. Oh, thanks. No problem. Thanks for joining me, Shauna. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for joining me. And again, like I was saying, if you have any other questions, I'm going to be having a lot more videos. I'm going to be doing this weekly. So each week will be kind of a different theme. And if you want me to tag you in the upcoming videos, just let me know and I can do that. And I'll definitely, let you know ahead of time what I'm going to be covering in that video. And like I had said earlier, if there's anything that you want me to go over, if there's anything that you in particular deal with stones that you're a little confused or you want some help with, absolutely just message me. You can follow my page just for all the updates on this and everything, which is just Daisy Farrell Medium at Facebook and also on Instagram. And you can also visit my website, which is daisyfarrellmedium.com. And that is all the different ways you can contact me. I actually was going to announce also that I'm going to be merging my two websites eventually, but I'll give you guys more information on that when it's really happening. But I've decided that I just feel really aligned and called to do that. And I just think it's going to be a lot more comprehensive. It'll just make a lot more sense. And it'll be less confusing for people to kind of get information and follow what I'm doing. So I'll keep everybody posted on all of that. And lastly, I just wanted to touch on an amazing course that I'm going to be doing with Laura Mazzotta, the Akashic therapist, called Thrive. And I'm going to add the link into the comments. It's targeted for anybody that is suffering from chronic illness, whether that be physical or mental. It's a 7-week course where we're going to really deep dive into every layer of your existence. So not just physical. And it's going to be your mental, emotional, spiritual, all of the different layers that Western medicine doesn't really touch on, to really create this sense of deep healing and for you to empower yourself and take all of your struggle from chronic illness and turn it into a way to empower your life and make you feel like you can thrive and use it as a superpower. So I am so excited for that. I feel like it is so needed. And there's so many people out there that are struggling with chronic illness. Me and Laura both have personal experience with them. So we're really feel so passionate about helping other people and guiding them through what we know can be very challenging. So please, if you know anybody that you think that would benefit from that, please tag them in this video or share this with them or share the link with them that I'm going to share in the comments. And I'll be posting most days about the information on that course as well. So I'll keep all of you posted. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining me, and I hope you have a beautiful day, and I will see you soon. Bye!